Spacey is here. In 2004, he became artistic director of the historic Old Vic Theatre in London. He is currently starring as the troubled British monarch in Richard II, which is the opening production of the theatre's new season. The role also marks Spacey's British Shakespearean debut. I am pleased to have him back on this program, and especially here in London. Welcome.
Welcome to the United Kingdom.
Nice to see you.
I'm not sure I ever thought I'd say that to you.
Nice to see you, King Richard. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
I want to talk about coming to the Old Vic, but I mean, this is something you have dreamed of doing for a while, being artistic director of a great theater.
Yeah, it hit me in really the end of 2000. I was here opening American Beauty for the London Film Festival, and I had asked Sally Green, who was our great landlady at the Old Vic, and who really saved this theater, if she could organize...
And other things around London,
and
too.
Other things around London. She's now running Ronnie Scott's,
Right.
which is one of the great jazz clubs. I asked her if she'd organize an evening where a lot of people from the arts, actors and writers and directors and people from media all over, would come and have a sort of free-flowing discussion about what they thought the Old Vic could be when it was at its best, what they thought its future might be. And this was before the idea of coming and actually running it myself happened. And it was sort of at this evening, I walked away from it feeling that whether anyone actually said it or not, the impression I got was that the Old Vic was at its best when it was an actors' theater. If you look back at its history, some of the greatest actors of their time played this stage. Gielgud and Olivier and Richard Burton and Judi Dench made her debut there, and Maggie Smith. And I mean, the list is
It was known as the home
list.
of Shakespeare in London.
It was, because Lillian Bayliss, who was the Sally Green of her day,
40 years
ran the theater.
whatever.
And although I'm happy to say that Sally Green does not cook bacon in the boxes as Lillian Bayliss apparently did. You knew when she was in the house if the smell of bacon was wafting through the stalls.
At the Old Vic?
At the Old Vic, yes. And what happened to me literally was I was at a point in my career where I'd had about, I don't know, 8 or 9 years of making movies. It had gone better for me than I could have ever imagined. And I asked myself, what am I going to do for the next 10 years of my life? Am I going to continue this kind of slightly nomadic lifestyle where you're in hotel rooms and you're in various locations and you're making movie after movie after movie and occasionally trying to squeeze a play in? And I thought, no, I think I'd rather do it the other way around. I think I'd rather do play after play after play and occasionally squeeze a movie in. So I made the decision then, at the end of 2000, that I wanted to come and be the artistic director, and Sally agreed and the board agreed. And so we kept it a secret until 2003. So I was running around functioning as a board member, but in fact I was staffing, I was finding our producer and raising money and doing a lot of stuff that you have to do to prepare for a first season. And then I moved here coming on 3 years ago this April. And we had our first season last year and went incredibly well. It's not easy to create, I think maybe people might think I stepped into a role that had existed. But the truth is that really, with 2 exceptions, which was Peter Hall came for a period of time and Jonathan Miller came for a period of time after Laurence Olivier left the National Theatre. The National Theatre was at the Old Vic for 14 seasons while they were building their building on the South Bank. And so the theatre had gone through a kind of checkered past over the last 30 years of it being more of a receiving house than a producing theater company. So what we've done is we have begun the Old Vic Theater Company. It is a brand new company, and it's not easy to begin theatrical beginnings. But we've had a pretty remarkable first year. We've had over 250,000 people come into our doors, and luckily for us, they stopped at the box office and they bought tickets and came in. We've had a remarkable amount of young students come in because I've continued the same policy I had on Iceman, where we have 100 seats at £12 for under 25s.
I should make note. You came here, Iceman was what, 1986 or something?
Iceman was in 98.
98 was Iceman.
We did it at the Almeida originally. Then we moved it to the Old Vic, which was my first experience working there and when I really fell in love with it. And then we took it to Broadway after that in 99.
So you get here, and you've got to not only think about, well, how many plays am I going to perform in? But also, how am I going to choose what we're going to present? I mean, what's the guiding philosophy other than to make this alive, make this original, make this, and at the same time, be mindful of its history?
Yes, you know, I talked to a lot of previous artistic directors of other institutions as well as people that had worked at the Vic. And whenever you ask someone, what is your artistic policy, you know, you kind of expect a very deep and meaningful response. But what you generally get is, well, I did the plays I wanted to do. So in a sense, you do the plays that you want to do. I think my mission with David Litterman, our producer, and Sally in this first season was, let us just try to do what we think is interesting, refreshing, different work that you can't see on any other stage in London. Let's try to return the Old Vic as a destination. Let's not set ourselves the goal of trying to reach the kind of historical significance that the Old Vic has in our first season. We're never going to do it. The truth is, I also think, now that I'm in Richard II, you know, being an actor and working in this particular medium, it's a little bit like being an athlete. You know, I wouldn't have been ready to do Richard II a year ago.
Why not?
Because I think the work that I've done this year, both in terms of the day-to-day job of being an artistic director, the day-to-day job of thinking about seasons 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and beyond, is one part of it. The other part is the work I've done as an actor with the directors that I've worked with and the plays that I've worked on. It's a bit like you need to go into training. So I know that now I feel more prepared to have done Richard II than I would have a year ago. And I think also one of the reasons why I wanted to do Richard was because Trevor Nunn, who's directed it, probably the premier Shakespearean director, certainly of his time, is that he'd never directed the play
So
before.
the two of you could learn together.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, it would be an opportunity to explore it together.
Yeah, but here's the interesting thing too: is that when it first came out, they said, somebody wrote this. They said when I read that Kevin was doing Richard II, I thought that's a typo. He's doing Richard III.
He must be doing
not
Richard
Richard II.
Well, you know, Charlie, I like doing the unexpected, and I don't necessarily like to do things that are the obvious. And there were a lot of choices. I mean, Trevor and I spent about 3.5 years talking about what we might do. And ultimately, Richard II fascinated me because it is a play about power. It's a play about public versus private. It raises all the questions of monarchy that are, you know, circling around in people's minds even today.
Sure.
And I also think that because Trevor's rendition of it, his conception of it, was to make it a modern play, as if there were a parallel.
When you mean by modern and modern dress, modern times.
Modern dress, modern times. We have a great use of video. In a sense, it's examining how the television camera, how spin, how someone gets their story out, how repeated images are used to convince people of one side or the other. And it's a remarkably powerful play, and I think people are probably getting a lot of parallels to
now,
today's
when you're
politics.
doing this, I want to talk about Richard II a lot, but when you're doing this, you go to the office in the morning and think about what's going to be on the rest of the season, because you've got an Arthur Miller play coming in here, directed by Robert Altman, and you've got a whole range of other things that you're... Now, are you spending part of your day with your artistic director's hat on and part of your day thinking about my performance tonight and how I can be better than I was last night, or what I might add to it? And
yeah, my days are sort of cut up into 3 different areas right now, because I spend a lot of time with respect to figuring out how we want our seasons to go. A lot of it is you know, it's a little bit like sitting with a jigsaw puzzle, because it's about trying to find the right pieces. You know, will this actor slot into this play? What play does this actor want to do that I've had a lunch with and said, will you come to the Old Vic? It's talking to a playwright that you've actually commissioned to write a new work, so you're waiting for the new work. It's meeting with designers. It's meeting with, you know, there's a lot of that goes on with respect to what the work is. On top of that, there is the tentacles of running a theater. It's not just about what goes on stage. You know, there's programs, there's marketing, there's advertising. A lot of outreach stuff. There's a lot of outreach stuff. We have a big community program, a big educational program as well.
To bring people in and introduce them to the theater, so that those people who might not ever have seen theater will see it in a way.
Yeah, and also just in terms of its own neighborhood. I mean, we've gone out. Surrounding the Old Vic on the South Bank is an enormous amount of low-income housing. And this is housing that Thatcher put in many, many years ago. You've got an incredible racial mix of families of different backgrounds and different economic, and most of them are pretty poor. Now, we went around to door, and we discovered that within spitting distance, most of these people have never been in the Old Vic. And I said, well, why not? Why should they perceive the Old Vic as a building where only those wealthy people from the other side of the river come? So we have brought
Are those artist type?
Yeah. So we brought in 1,500 families in the last 11 months from the neighborhood either at no cost at all or huge discounts. We brought in over 900 children into our workshops from these families. So we are trying to be inclusive within our neighborhood, and at the same time try to, in a sense, brand the Old Vic outside its borders of Waterloo.
Yeah, but are you also, at the same time, as you think about the future, going to your friends, say, I mean, a lot of people thought that when you came here, Kevin's going to bring some of his pals from the acting community, whether they're movie stars or theater stars. People like John Malkovich, for example, who's made his beginning Steppenwolf and on Broadway.
And don't think I haven't spoken to him.
I'm sure. See, but that's the great thing about it. It is the idea you're now in a position to go to friends who you know are good, who you know have always had a long of a theater, who may be making movies primarily, and say, is there something you are obsessed about? Is there something you most really want to do?
Well, and it's also, I think it's hugely important too. While that expectation I understand, and I always would like to be able to bring people to the theater who both have credibility, who are good at what they do, and might actually sell seats, which is why you want to bring in those kind of actors at that level. But there's also a very important aspect too, which is that we are building a company, and a company has to survive and do well beyond a particular actor being on stage. For example, I'm not going to be in another show this season because I think it's hugely important that the theater start to stand on its own two feet. That eventually the novelty of my being on stage will wear off anyway, because I'm going to be up quite a lot. I mean, just this year I've been on stage 36 weeks by the end of the year. But I believe that it's important that eventually the Old Vic becomes a destination where people just want to go see what's on at the Old Vic, regardless of who's in a play. It's what the Royal Court has done, it's what the Dunmore has done, it's what the Almeida has done, it's what the National does. So that takes a while to do, and so my impression of it, my belief is, and my commitment is, that this is probably a decade-long
You also
commitment.
believe you went out to do, you left Philadelphia Story to go out and do Superman.
Yes, for
You've got
6
Ian
weeks.
McKellen, who, because of Lord of the Rings, had a whole new audience. That if you can bring people like that, you and Ian, if they know you from movies, they may come to the theater for the first time.
Look, I have never had a problem with why people come to the theater. If they come because they've seen someone in movies, I have no problem. Buy the ticket,
sit in the seat,
sit
and have
in
a
the
good
seat.
time,
It's
and
then
learn
our job
Yeah.
to give them an experience that they won't forget. And in particular, I think, you know, I can't emphasize this enough, how hugely important I think it is to reach out to younger audiences. You know, we've got so much competition with respect to entertainment that if you don't get kids young enough, 17, 18, 19 years old, to go to the theater and realize it's a remarkable experience, that they can have a great time with their pals. It's better than sitting at home and going through bad television.
It's a living experience.
Anyway. It's a living experience. And maybe the next time someone says, hey, you want to go see a play, they won't make a face, but they'll go, yeah, I had a really good time when I went to the Vic.
The first year, there was some criticism of the first year. You take that in stride. You haven't seen the reviews of Richard II, which almost unanimously, because I've read 6 or 7 of them, have been very, very good. I mean, I don't know what 4 or 5 stars mean, but it seems like a lot.
Well, for a restaurant, I mean, that's pretty good.
But they seem to say good things. But also, I mean, the first year, people questioned your choices as to why you did this, but you were saying that was just a learning experience. I'm proud of what we did the first year.
I
don't quarrel with whatever people say.
I don't quarrel with the fact that sometimes our friends on the aisle will be with us and sometimes they won't. I have a different philosophy about why work should be produced. I don't believe that plays should be looked at strictly from a literary perspective. What is their literary value? I think that there are a lot of reasons to produce plays. If you want to develop a writer's work, the best way for a writer to learn and to grow and to become better is to see their work in production. If you want to offer actors wonderful parts, then do something that is entertaining and enjoyable. I really felt that if I had begun where we have been, you know, criticized for not beginning, which is Shakespeare, Ibsen, Shaw, Chekhov, we wouldn't have had 250,000 people come into our theater.
They wouldn't.
I don't think so.
Why wouldn't
not unless we had put a major name into each show. And I think that what we were trying to do was to be refreshing, to, in a sense, reach out to a slightly different audience with each of the shows that we did. And it's perfectly fine that people question what we did. I think, to some degree, there was somebody who wrote, and I don't remember who it was, but I thought this was pretty funny, that unless I had come riding down Waterloo Road on a white horse with Laurence Olivier standing on my shoulders, it wouldn't have mattered what I did.
You could never be as good as they want you to be.
And the truth is, I walked into the role realizing that, look, I'm going to come under criticism, and I'm going to come under criticism for a number of reasons. First of all, the stakes are very high. The Old Vic is just one of those theaters that people have a great passion for and a great feeling about. And I think particularly those who write criticism, many of them were around in the 1950s and 1960s when the National Theatre was there. So I think there is a memory of what the Old Vic was, and in some way they might want it to be what it was, but I don't view it that way. I think it has to be what it is now. And I think that we have to be entertaining. If people are going to go out and spend £42, I want them to walk out of that theater at night saying, that was a really good time. Now, there's an argument that is made.
Or I hadn't seen that before.
Well, yes, I hadn't seen that before. There's an argument that's made that I don't believe, I don't cotton to, which is that unless a play is great, it's not worth producing. And I don't believe that. I think that in reality, truly, Charlie, there's very few great plays. And if your standard of a great play is a Shakespeare play, well, then a lot of plays, after that fall to the wayside. I think that there is valuable work, important work to be done. You have to be willing to take chances, and you have to be willing to investigate new writing, new work. We brought a European writer over, and we're very proud of having done it. And, despite the fact that some of our critics have not been on our side, it hasn't had a terrible effect on our box office. So I suppose I look at it this way, which is that my major concern is to develop a relationship with an audience. We have a 1,000-seat theater without a huge advertising budget, without a huge marketing budget, without a single pound of subsidy from the government. We are a commercial operation, and therefore we have to fill that theater every night, and that's the relationship that I'm building.
How much of your time do you spend on fundraising?
Quite a lot, Charlie. In fact, I'm fundraising now.
This is part of the
process. To all my
process.
American friends, we do have an offshoot of the Old Vic called Friends of the Old Vic.
And here is our...
And it's a tax write-off,
right.
And here's our website.
Call this number, and here's our website.
But the truth is, I do spend a lot of time. There's a number of different areas in which I am raising money. Obviously, the theater company itself, which is about the producing and coming up with the money to do the actual work. There's also a lot of money that we raise for our educational or outreach programs. And then on top of that, we're about to announce at the end of November a capital campaign to raise over £20 million to renovate the entire theater and to bring it up to a 21st century standard. A lot of people don't know, and it is amusing, and I'm happy that we're going to do our level best to fix it. The building has never actually been fully renovated.
So you can get the state to do that?
Well, I hope to get the state to do that, and I know you had Mr. Brown on
yes, I did.
Yesterday, and he and I are in discussion about it. He's been quite supportive.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing is I'm going out and I'm spending a lot of time meeting with individual business leaders, having dinners, and trying to get them on side of why I believe that the arts are worth donating money to. And why it's important that we continue to produce plays.
Richard II, tell me about this play. What commends it to an audience? You said it's a story of a king who loses, a king who...
yes,
there's a debate about monarchy, there is a debate about spin,
and there's a debate about
PR.
how it is that people go about usurping power, how it is that...
It's all about power.
It's all about power, and it's all... But I mean, to a certain degree, my experience of the play, from the journey I'm trying to take with Richard, this is a man who has known nothing else in his life. I mean, he was crowned either at 9 or at 12, depending on which version you believe. So he's been a king his entire life, and been a king for whom no one ever said you were wrong, or that's a bad idea.
He had no critics.
He had no critics. And the truth is, he's a man who makes a series of bad political decisions, and comes to rue it. And ultimately, it is a journey about, I think the play, in a sense, operates under two spheres. It is an external journey and an examination of monarchy and pomp and all of that stuff, which even in a modern production, we're still robed and crowned and all of those accoutrements that still happen today in the House of Lords and Houses of Parliament. And then it is about a man who, when stripped of that power of his reign, is forced to go inside of himself as a man in a way that he never had before in his life. And by the end of the play, is a better man, and probably would be a better king if he were to be king.
And then he says it's too late, though.
Well, it's too late with respect to his position, but it's not too late with respect to his heart and his soul.
What's your best soliloquy in this?
Well, you know, there's so many extraordinary passages because this play was written at a time when Shakespeare was writing a great number of sonnets. And so I think that that process of writing the sonnets infused itself into the character of Richard II in a way that it almost isn't reflected in any other Shakespeare play. It's a beautiful way of speaking. The language, the rhyming couplets. You could take sections of it out and they could be their own sonnets. When he comes back from Ireland, beautiful end of Act One. The abdication scene where he actually takes his crown off.
And he says,
is a heart. It's just a heart-wrenching scene of him having to, in a sense, depose himself.
what kind of English are you using?
The King's English, as they would say, or as
Or
they
the
say,
BBC English,
as they
some
say
would
in
say.
theater. Yeah, it used to be called BBC, and now it's called RP.
Yes.
And it's all about its perceived
RP
English.
is
RP it's just the perceived English.
Okay.
And I've had a great coach, and I had Trevor, who was
Yeah.
always there, you know, whispering
Right.
supplant in my
Supplant.
ear.
Rather
It's
than-
interesting, you know, it is in a way like tackling another language, not just Shakespeare itself and the rhythms and the iambic pentameter, but the language of British. You know, we have so many words in America that I don't say glass, I say glass.
So do I.
So
Yeah,
it's
right.
after 46 years of saying something, you know, it took
Glass.
quite a while to get it under my belt. And you know, the first week and a half, I think, of previews, which is why we had a long preview period, I just wanted to try to live it for a while so that stuff became second nature and I wasn't thinking about how to say it.
Is there a difference in the quality of life in London and New York?
Well, you know, you probably feel this too. There's a lot about London that is like New York in the sense of its energy. It's a town that has a lot going on all the time. It's obvious it doesn't stay up quite as late, although they're doing their level best to change that. I do enjoy it here, and I think that probably, you know, after living my life in America, mostly in New York, to pick up your life and move to another country, to start a new life, you know, it's an incredible opportunity. And life has a way of throwing us opportunities we could have never imagined.
You said a famous thing about success, you know, the notion of what you have to do when you find yourself at a certain level of success is do something with it. And you've chosen to give back.
Yeah, I suppose you know, when I look back, I've had a remarkable run, and I've been given so many opportunities, and I feel so blessed to do what I love to do every day and to work with the people that I work with that, you know, I look at the movie career and it's been remarkable, but movies don't need my help. Theater does. And for me to be able to dedicate myself to this, to get up every day and feel as energized and excited and as focused as I am about doing this to me is what I was meant to do. And by that I suppose,
not act, but do something in addition to acting,
do
to
something,
run a theater.
Do something that I hope will last. You know, if I come here and I have a successful time, and 2 years after I leave, the theater closes, I will have failed.
Yeah.
What I want, what I'm doing, every decision I make, every decision our company is making together is about making sure that we build it for a successor and toward a theater company that will last long beyond
the theater has
exit.
its own legs.
The theater has always had its own legs. It's been standing there since 1818.
Yeah, I know, but it needed help.
It needed help, and at the time it was built, you know, the only other thing on the South Bank was a mental hospital. We're glad we've had a few more things crop up since then.
Let me talk a little bit about what you're going to do in addition. The Arthur Miller play. You got Robert Altman coming over here. This was the last play, and he was working on this when he died in terms of some rewriting.
Yeah.
Resurrection Blues.
Resurrection Blues. They had done a workshop of it about a year ago, October, in New York. Robert Altman expressed a great interest in doing it. He sort of came on board to it before, well, right about the middle of the discussions that we were having as early as last November. And he was working on it. And then when he passed, we continued the discussions with our New York partner, and Mr. Altman after a number of phone calls, decided that he wanted to
But Arthur
tackle it.
wanted it to come to the Old Vic.
He did. I was very moved to hear that, not just from our producer, but from Rebecca Miller, who is
His daughter.
Arthur's daughter, who I know because we did, her very first acting role was in a television miniseries that we did together with Jack Lemmon called Murder of Mary Fagan.
Yeah, yeah.
And Rebecca is now an accomplished filmmaker, married to Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's your choice, there's your challenge, get Daniel Day-Lewis and Rebecca here together on the stage.
Yeah. So she had indicated that the Old Vic was always a favorite of Arthur's. He always hoped that a play of his would go there. So I'm very pleased that it's going to happen.
And how many other productions are you going to do Moon for the Misbegotten?
I will do that at the opening of our 3rd season. So the slot we're in now with Richard will be Moon for the Misbegotten next year. So I won't begin rehearsals for that until August. And that reunites me with Howard Davies, who directed The Iceman Cometh.
And reunites you with O'Neill.
Indeed.
and remembers and makes you remember your old friend Jack Lemmon.
Oh, yeah, without question. Because many people may not know that Moon for the Misbegotten is actually a sequel to Long Day's Journey into Night. It takes the older alcoholic son, Jamie, it takes his story on. Because O'Neill had always felt that he hadn't done his brother justice in Long Day's Journey, and he wanted to complete his story. So he wrote
Tyrone's story.
This is Jamie Tyrone's story.
When you, Shakespeare for you, what does it mean to you? I mean, when the idea of a young guy who somehow knew he wanted to be an actor very early, who went to Juilliard, who started in New York and then got in films and did all those 40 films you have done, including an Oscar for American Beauty and all of that stuff. Was it always a part of your dream, not just to do the theater thing, but to have an opportunity to come back to Shakespeare?
Yes. You know, I studied Shakespeare in school. I did it in high school. I did a lot of festivals. My first professional job was in Henry IV Part 1 in Central Park, in which I played the messenger. Thank you. I had 6 lines. Yes. And I've always wanted to do it.
Joe Pat made you be very good at every one of them.
Joe Pat made me be very good. I was a lot of characters in that play. I was a part of the ensemble. I've always wanted to tackle the great Shakespearean parts. And I suppose, like I've said, it's a little bit like being an athlete. I don't think I was ready to do it until now. And I was a little bit relieved when I discovered in some of my research that Laurence Olivier was 31 when he came to the Old Vic in 1947, might have been 47, to do his first season of Shakespeare. Really, he was 31. So I thought, well, 46 is not bad. Yeah. It's, you know, it's a little bit longer.
You can work your way towards Othello.
I would love to work. Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that Othello is a part I should play, but Iago is a pretty good part, and you know, maybe someday Richard III and Coriolanus. There's some extraordinary parts, but a lot of it will have to do with the director and the time, and you know, when you're trying to map out a season, what is the right thing to do at the right time, and also to be able to continue to carve out a little bit of film work, because the other part of my day I didn't get to, is in addition to being an actor, is that I still run Trigger Street, my film company in America, and we are producing an enormous amount of stuff.
Aren't you doing some reality television in which you are kind of a mentor to young actors?
Yeah, no, what it is the Learning Channel has done a thing on interns, and they've assigned 3 different interns to 3 different companies. One is working for Robert Evans, one is working for Method Man, and one is working for Trigger Street. And so I'm interviewed a couple of times in it. It's not a reality show in which they followed me around on camera, although they did come to Cannes.
But are you going to select them, or are you going to do based on performances or something?
It's essentially it's a show about these 3 interns and how they do, but it's not a contest. It's not that kind of reality show. It's more of an exploration about what it's like and what it takes to come and work at a major company.
You'll do 1 movie a year?
Maybe 2. You know, it depends. I mean, and look, the truth is even when I wasn't doing theater, you'd be lucky if you found 1 or 2 movies a year that were worth doing. So I'm just going to stay on that track.
Usual Suspects is not a movie that's about to happen.
It is. You know, it was a great rumor. Apparently,
started by you.
Started by me, apparently, and I was speaking to a waitress in a coffee shop in Sydney, and I told her,
drunk with coffee or something,
we're going to do a sequel to Usual Suspect. Well,
did you actually say that to her?
I didn't say anything.
You said
no.
Nothing.
This was just a made-up story. So we did.
So the word we're going to do a sequel to Usual Suspects, same director and me,
never would have come out of my mouth.
I
wouldn't have considered.
Why isn't that a great idea?
I think it's a terrible idea.
Why?
Because it's a terrible idea.
Tell me, who's your wish list to come to, in terms of either plays or actors, male or female, to come to
the Old Vic?
The Old Vic.
Judi Dench.
Oh man.
Jeremy Irons.
Here's what I want you to do for me. The single most loving television show I did in the last year, probably, was Maggie Smith and Judi Dench together. It's unbelievable. Can we put them together in a play?
We'd love to put them together.
Or do we have a play that would fit?
We're doing The Usual Suspects, and it's a good play, I think. And it's strange casting because she's going to play Fenster.
You don't want to hear what I say, do you?
No, not at all.
I may have ideas.
Yeah, you want to come on our board?
Yes,
you have to give some money, Charlie.
Yes, I'll raise money for you. No, you know who should be on your board? Your very good friend, the former president.
Former president.
Bill Clinton should be on your board. He knows how to raise money.
Former president has been very supportive
of the Old Vic.
Of the Old Vic, and
you got him raising money for you too.
Well,
I can see it now. I can see it now. He says,
"Come on down to that Vic.
Give this dollar to my library and give this dollar to to my pal Kevin."
I'm going to get on the phone right after and give him a call. I'd love to see Judy. I'd love to see Maggie. I'd love to get Peter O'Toole back up. You know, O'Toole has been so incredibly supportive. He's come to every one of our shows.
Yeah.
He sits in the front row in the student seats.
So he can hear, or what? What's the reason?
Well, he just likes sitting that close.
You let him sit in the student seats?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I like being under 25.
See, I knew if I could get you to do one impression,
I
would have scored. So who else?
There's many. I mean, there's also great writers.
America. I mean, are you seriously talking to my friend Malkovich about doing something?
Malkovich has been in discussion. I would love to get Edward Norton
here. Are these serious
here.
discussions, or you call them up and say, I'm at the Old Vic, you have any good ideas, let me know.
These are serious
It's not a
discussions.
discussion, that's just a...
These are serious discussions in the sense that I've asked people, think about what play you might want to do. I'll come to you with a play if I think of one. So there's a lot of back and forth. And, you know, a lot of it has to do with people's schedules. But I would love to have a lot of people come.
Okay, how about some American playwrights? How about some Tennessee Williams? Can we do that?
We can.
Can we do some Sam Shepard here?
We can. We can do some Mamet.
You don't need me, do you? No, Mamet. You could do Mamet, yeah.
Yeah.
You could do Gary Glenn Ross, except it's just been done.
Yeah, but we're going to do it. We're going to change the title.
Do what?
It's going to be called Gene Barry Glenn Close.
That'll be good.
It's a strange.
It's
about a game show.
It might work. Yeah.
No, and I also, you know, we have a program called Old Vic New Voices in which we encourage new writing. So we've gone over to New York and introduced 5 or 6 British playwrights over there. And then we brought 5 or 6 American playwrights over here, and we do these staged readings. So we're beginning to try to build, I hope, a stronger cultural bridge between the United States and I know for a fact that I will travel with Moon from the Misbegotten and come to Broadway with it, as we did with Ice Cream.
Sure, yeah.
Because I want to begin to, as I say, bring the Old Vic brand beyond the borders.
Who's going to be in Moon for the Misbegotten other than you?
We don't know yet.
All right. Your ambition knows no bounds, does it?
To do
no,
what I'm
really
doing
doesn't.
does no
I mean,
bounds.
you don't.
But I'm having a blast.
I mean, my sense is that, I mean, you have pretty much set out, first of all, you know, to be an actor. And you, from an early age, you went to Juilliard. Then you set out to know how to communicate and how to be entertaining on television. You had 40 films and 2 Oscars, right? Now you've got the theater. I mean, how many actors would dream of being artistic director? The Old Vic or other play. I can't think of anywhere better than the Old Vic. I mean, history and everything else. There's nothing you don't think you can do.
No, that's not true. There are many things I don't think I can do. No, that's not true, because there are many times when I'll read a play or someone will suggest something and I think,
great,
that's not
but
right
not for me.
And even if I think it's great, you know, and this is certainly true in film, where I may have said no to a movie and someone else did it and it turned out to be a really good film, I'm very delighted, but I felt my presence would somehow be the wrong thing or imbalance it in some way. I am certainly, without question, and sometimes I get accused of arrogance, that if I set out to do something that I believe in, I'm passionate about, I'm dedicated to, I'm focused on, that somehow that gets turned into arrogance and you know.
No, I just had ambition, not
strange.
arrogance.
But if I believe I'm challenged by something, if I don't think something is going to come easy to me, then I love setting out to try to accomplish it, because I'm still learning. You know, I'm still growing.
Even as an actor.
I mean, I can't tell you what it was like every day in rehearsal with Trevor Nunn. It was like going to a Shakespeare masterclass. And what I've learned about the role, about the play, about myself as an actor, about my weaknesses, through this first 3 weeks of previews, where the performance has gone from the first night we did it to last night, is a remarkable journey. And where it will be in 5 weeks is a remarkable journey.
Things you have learned about, not just about acting.
Yeah.
About acting.
Yeah.
Just give me one example of what Kevin Spacey has learned about acting.
I've learned in the last 2 weeks that I don't have to try so hard. I think that my first Shakespearean role, a certain amount of pressure about, will I be able to do it? Will I sound like a British king? Will I work within a company of 24, quite frankly, much more accomplished Shakespearean actors than myself? And we have a broad range. We've got Julian Glover, who's in his 70s, all the way to somebody who got out of RADA a couple of weeks ago. But they've grown up with it. I haven't. They've been incredibly supportive. And night to night, I've learned as we've gone through. I got a letter from somebody, actually, that took me to task. It was kind of lovely. And I brought it in and read it to Trevor one day. It just took me to task for how can you yell through your speeches. And the truth is that probably in the first 4 or 5 or 6 performances, I was just beginning to gauge where I had to go, where it needed to go. I didn't need to fill the house in the way that I was feeling an obligation to do so. I could pull back. I could allow the internal, quieter moments to actually happen and trust them. And that's about learning. That's about learning night to night. Yeah. Theater is not frozen. That's why reviews, they're about one performance. One night.
And one prism.
And one prism
sees it through one
from where they're
experiences.
sitting.
Exactly.
And theater is alive. It is different night to night for everyone. You're performing in front of 1,000 different people. You are growing, you are changing, you are trying new things. And it is all about those subtleties and how they affect a performance that I think, a work can begin in one place and end in another. And it's like if you, I often make this analogy, but I think it's the right one. If you play tennis, if you play any kind of sport, you go out there, it's the same game and, you've got the same rules, but every night, every time you go out, you're working on a different part of your game. Yeah, exactly. And it's always a different game, and it's always thrilling to do.
And just as Tiger Woods, one example, or Roger Federer, 2 people playing a game like no one has ever played it before. Both of them go to the practice court or to the practice grounds at a golf course because they believe they can improve it and take it to another level. And that
it's absolutely true.
That's why I have great admiration for you because I know how hard a worker you are. You have to go to the theater, I know, to do this. Thank you for doing this.
No, thank you. I'm
it's
delighted
a pleasure to have
you over here. It's a little odd not being in the black room with the round table.
I know.
I feel a little bit,
a bit colorful
it's
for
a
me,
bit,
isn't it?
It's a bit, quite frankly, Charlie, you've gone a little bit more, what's the word I'm searching for? A little bit more deco than I've ever seen you before.
Is it becoming?
Becoming what? I don't know.
Groucho, too.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you
You got
very
2
much.
of them.
Kevin Spacey.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard II at the Old Vic will be at the Old Vic in this production until November something.
November 26th.
No, so it's probably sold out, but still try.
No,
No, it's not sold out. Call.
And even if you can't get tickets for Richard, Resurrection Blues is coming up. We're doing this other thing, which I think you might find interesting. We are creating the first piece of theater to come out of Iraq.
Oh, I want to ask
the
about
war.
that.
It's going to be an adaptation of Stravinsky's A Soldier's Tale, using Iraqi actors, Iraqi musicians, British actors, British musicians, in both languages.
Based on an Iraqi poet?
No, Stravinsky.
Stravinsky.
Yeah, Soldier's Tale. So it's being adapted to be a modern piece, and it's quite extraordinary. So that's coming over for 11 performances in February.
You're a politically active guy. In a sense, you care about politics, you care about your country, and
I read the papers. I'm fascinated by, as you pointed out, the quote in the headline today.
There was a quote in the papers here, the Independent, for specifically saying that President Bush had said to the Palestinians at some point, that part of the reason
he went to war was because God told him to.
God told him to.
Yes.
Kevin Spacey at the Old Vic. Back in a moment.